Welcome back, everyone. I'm really excited to be here today with Emily Messall, editor of Barren Magazine, fiction editor, Barren Magazine. Welcome, welcome. There was some time confusion, but we made it work. And here we are. It's great to see you. I'm glad you could come out.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
As always, thank you to the audience. Any questions you have, just go ahead and type them into the chat and I will work them into the conversation with Emily. So let's jump right in. Can you tell us, it sounds like you're sort of new to Barren Magazine, but can you give us a kind of overview of the history, how it started, when it started, and then how you came on board?
Right. I don't know too much about how it started. I know Jason has been there since the beginning, as far as I know. Jason's our editor-in-chief. And kind of like the whole point of Barren, it seems like, is like we want to make it a place for everyone. We want to make it a place where, like, no matter like race, gender, ethnicity, any of that stuff, like, we really want to give homes to as many pieces as we can in Barren. We don't want it to be something super exclusive, something really like seeming unreachable. We want Barren to be very accessible for everybody who wants to submit. I got started with Barren my junior year of college. I was taking a writing and editing for publication class in my lit major. And one of like our big end of the year project was to like, most people in there were writers. I'm not much of a writer. I'm more of an editor. So the main project of the class was for people to take a piece that they had written or write a new piece and send it out to different magazines for submission and stuff like that. But my professor, the great man he was, let me kind of shift it so that I could do something more for editing. And he had me just kind of reach out to different lit magazines and ask, like, hey, do you guys need a reader? Do you need an editor? Like, what can I do? And at the time, Megan was our fiction editor. And she let me hop on and I read for them for a while, and then school got crazy and I had to take a little bit of a break. And then I jumped back in when Norman was editor as a, oh my gosh, now I can't remember the word. Not a copy editor, contributing editor, sorry. And did that for a while longer. And then Norman knew he was going to step away. So he asked if I wanted to get ready to take over for him. And I said, sure, why not? So I've been with Barren since I want to say 2018 or 2019. I can't remember which, but yeah.
It's all a blur.
It is.
So how did you find Barren specifically? Was it these people that had connections to the magazine, or did you seek it out?
So I had been following Barren on Twitter. I was trying to get, as I was thinking about what I wanted to do as a career in college, I was just kind of like looking at different avenues, different like possibilities, because I went to college wanting to be a teacher and I decided, oh my God, no, I don't want to do that. And then I was like, okay, well, I'm halfway done with my English degree. Like, what do I do with that? So I started following different lit magazines and following different authors, small authors, big authors, stuff like that. And then Barren came up in one of like my recommended like people you might want to follow. And I was like, oh, sure, why not? And I clicked on it and started reading, and yeah.
And it's interesting to hear you say that like it tends to be, or the goal of the magazine is to be an inclusive journal, but obviously you can't accept all people that submit to the magazine. So how do you balance that? I imagine that's tricky. Like as an editor, you probably want to publish everybody and encourage everybody and be truly inclusive, but obviously it is by definition exclusive, right? Because you're going to be rejecting a lot of work.
Yeah.
So how do you sort of balance that ethos and mindset of the magazine?
I think personally, I can't speak for any of the other editors or anything like that, but I think personally, if there was a story that we really enjoyed but just didn't have room for, whenever I'm writing like an acceptance or rejection, I try really hard to make sure the author knows that like we really enjoyed their piece, and like when we say that we want to hear more from you, like we mean it. Like we're not be like, yeah, like write to us more, but like whatever. Like I'm like, no, like please send us something else. Or like if it's something that was like, it was just magic, but we just can't make it work for that issue, I will ask if they would allow us to hold it for the next issue. And a couple of people have been really great about that. But yeah, so I think we all try and encourage more authors, like, hey, like even if we didn't accept your piece this time, like please keep writing, keep sending things.
So to back up for a second, you guys publish fiction, poetry, nonfiction, and photo essays. Is that
Yeah,
right?
photo essays. So we've got like short fiction, which is what I edit for. Then we've got flash fiction, flash nonfiction, short nonfiction, poetry, and then photo essays.
Okay. And as fiction editor, like what can you describe the kind of work that you're actively looking for? And I want to read, I know real quick that Barren describes itself as publishing hard truths, long stares, and gritty lenses. So does that sort of capture what you're looking for in work?
I think it does. I think specifically, I personally kind of like the weirder stuff, like the more like dark, like horror, paranormal, like stuff like that. And I think overall, we try and give pieces to homes, or give homes to pieces, sorry, that other magazines might like kind of shy away from for like subject matter or language or things like that. But yeah, we try and not, because there are important topics that are hard to talk about that do need to be talked about. Or like I feel like there are some topics that need to have more of a space in the literary world. So I think Barren tries hard to give homes to those pieces that other magazines might kind of shy away from.
Sure. Can you give an example of a recent piece that you accepted that would sort of fit into that? Like,
yeah, I know there was a piece, I believe in the last, oh yes, okay, so I don't know. I didn't talk to Jason. I don't know if I can talk about the upcoming issue, but I'm going to anyways. So Jason, I'm sorry. But we have a piece coming up in the next issue, kind of surrounding like, I guess you might call it animal abuse, but I wouldn't really. It's like the story of this woman and she's trying really hard to bond with this dog. And this dog is just kind of aggressive and there's no real bond happening there. And I don't want to give away the ending, but like, it's not great. And it's kind of like, it's a darker piece, it's a more gritty piece. And it's something that not a lot of people would typically, I feel like, accept. People kind of like, oh, like, I don't know about that. But we try and look for like the meaning behind the piece and not just like what the piece is on the surface, if that makes sense.
Right. So it shouldn't be just like shocking for shock's
Yes, exactly. And that was something my editors and I just talked about, is like how to find that balance between shock factor to make you go, oh my gosh, and shock factor to make you feel something deeper.
Right. Yeah. I noticed actually, I was looking through a recent photo essay and I noticed there was a content warning on it, which I don't typically encounter on lit mags. And I have sort of, I think a lot of people have sort of mixed feelings about content warnings on literature, because I think it is, it's wise to prepare people. On the other hand, literature is sort of intended to unsettle you.
Right.
So I wasn't sure, I didn't have like a full philosophy. I was just like, oh, that's interesting. They have a content warning. And then I actually looked at the photo essay and I was like, oh, wow.
Right.
This is pretty
right.
stuff.
Yeah. So we do, a lot of the times when, at least for fiction, when someone submits a story in the submission email, they'll include like any content warnings or like at the very top of the actual piece itself. And I will, when I'm putting those into, Jason and I, when we're putting those into like our submission, like a Excel sheet, we'll include that for our editors, for our readers. So if they don't have the headspace to read that piece, they absolutely don't have to. And then we try not to use, I don't know, I would say we use them carefully when we're publishing. Like Jason and I kind of discussed like the pieces that we think truly do need a content warning and the pieces that we're like, maybe not.
Yeah, I noticed, or unless I missed it, I didn't see it on any of the fiction, just I think with the photo essay where like photos are they can get under your skin in a way that, writing may not be able to. So that was just seemed useful there. Yeah. So how do you, I imagine if you're reading a lot of this kind of work, like how do you as an editor kind of deal with it? It sounds like you would be seeing a lot of stuff that is so just to tell people some of the themes that I encountered, it was like animal abuse, suicide, cancer, like really heavy, emotionally intense stuff, which I think is it's great that there's a home for that. I also imagine as an editor, it's pretty difficult to read a lot of submissions that are like that. So can you talk about like your editorial process, both in going through these kind of serious works, and then just also like on a craft level, like do you read just 3 sentences and then stop if you don't like something?
Right. Okay, so coming with like the subject matter pieces, like I said, Jason and I will put content warnings in the sheet. And if I know there's something that I'm absolutely like, nope, can't read that, I will put in like, we have a little like notes section where everyone kind of like puts their thoughts on a piece. I'll ask, hey, can anyone else read this first? If not, no worries, like I'll get to it. And I'll kind of like, if I know I'm gonna read that day, I'll like prepare myself. I'm like, all right, what am I getting into here? But and I think I try and like handle it mostly just like coming from a lens of like respect. And it's like, because I don't, we're reading fiction, but fiction can always come from a place of nonfiction and things like that. And I don't ever want, even if like, I don't know, it's hard to explain. I kind of act like whoever like the author is standing behind me watching me read their piece. Like I want to be respectful even if no one's watching me, because I would expect that level of respect from someone reading my piece. So I just like, some pieces are kind of too out there for me, and but I still try and come from a place of respect, and like I nobody ever knows what anybody else has gone through, what they're writing about, why they're writing it. So I try and come from from a level of understanding, and I think that helps me put like a little bit of a wall between it, as like I'm a listener and I can listen, but I don't have to feel. And like maybe that's bad, because maybe that means that like I don't know, I don't let it get to me as much as it should. But I feel like without that wall, it would be kind of hard to read stuff like this all the time. And then like with the frequency of Barren's publishing, we publish quarterly, so I get like a big long break from reading stuff like that, and then I feel like I'm better equipped to like go back into it. So I think our publishing schedule also really helps with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Makes sense. And then just as on a craft level, like at what point do you know that a story is not going to work for the magazine? And do you have a policy of reading every story regardless all the way to the end? Or do you, I spoke to one editor who will jump ahead to get to the ending of a story, even if she likes the story, just to see how it's going to arrive at that ending. So do you have like any kind of quirks like that?
I don't. Before I was lead editor, Norman had us break up stories, and he broke up stories into batches. So each batch had like 10 or so stories, and then, we would each kind of like grab a batch and read that whole batch, and then, do overlap as we could. But I feel like this kind of weird sense of responsibility as lead editor. I'm like, no, like I have to read everything. So like I try very, very hard to get everything read. And if I'm really running out of time, I'll like text my co-editor and I'm like, hey, can you please like finish these if you have time or whatever. But I try to read every single piece, and I try to read it all the way through. And if a piece, if I'm like, I would say like 3 or 4 pages in, and I'm like, I feel like I'm dragging my feet to read it, then I might scroll a little bit and like scan and like see what else is going on further down. And then if it catches my interest later, then I'll go back and read the rest. But for the most part, I try very hard to read every piece all the way through.
And do you work with writers to edit pieces?
So I haven't done much of that yet. Sometimes like we try to send very personal rejections, specifically this is what we really liked about it, and this is what maybe like made us like lean towards like not accepting it. And a lot of the times like I'll make sure to put at the end like, please let me know if like you need anything else. I love to help. And then sometimes writers will respond like, hey, like what do you think about this or that, or changing this way? And like sometimes I'll ask for advice. But for the most part, we try not to edit much content wise. I'll fix the formatting if formatting is strange. Like I know Jason likes to have it formatted, certainly. So I'll fix the formatting, and then like grammar and spelling and things like that. And then if we're having issues, like I know there was a story, I can't remember which story, but there was a story a while ago, and it used like an inappropriate slang term. And we went back and forth with the editor or with the author, like, hey, is it okay if you would, can you change this word? Can you do that? Whatever. And for the most part, authors are pretty understanding,
Mhm.
and pretty easy to work with. So that's also really helpful. But yeah, we try not to edit too much, like content wise. And sometimes there's like a weird gap in the story where like it just doesn't fit, and it would just be more cohesive if that part's taken out. We try to work with the author about like fixing it up so it maybe fits Barren a little bit better. But we're not, if they say no, we're never like, okay, never mind. Like we're
Mhm.
like, okay, like whatever, that's fine.
Sure. And do you have kind of an attitude toward unlikable characters? Because I just thought of that question because you were talking about someone who's trying to bond with a dog, and it's just
Mhm.
not happening. And it sort of reminded me of, there's a story up now. I think it's in the latest issue, maybe another issue, but it's a teacher who, she's not like very invested. She's pretty alienated as a teacher.
Mhm.
I wouldn't describe the character as unlikable, but
Right.
it's an interesting character, but she's not like a lovable,
Right.
peppy kind of. So is that how do you feel about unlikable characters? Would you say that that's something that you favor, that you sort of like those characters who are darker, maybe alienated in some way,
Mhm.
or do you just seek across the board different kinds of characters?
I think we try and accept like a wide variety of different things, like a wide variety of different characters in stories. Personally, I really like morally ambiguous characters, like kind of like if you've ever seen the movie Public Enemies with Johnny Depp, like he's playing like what is generally a bad guy, like the gangster, but like in the movie just makes you love him anyways. I love stories like that where it's like it would, a character that would typically be seen as like the villain or the bad guy or a bad person, but the lens of the story makes you love them. I adore stories like that. There's just something about like I don't know, like knowing like I guess like making villains more human, I guess, is something I really like in a story. But just from like unlikable characters, I think it differs per story, I would say. I think they have to be written well. Um, because sometimes an unlikable character makes the story, but sometimes the unlikable character makes the story also not likable.
Right.
So if I'm reading it and still enjoying the story, but maybe not enjoying the character, that's fine. But if the character takes over the whole story, then I'm like,
Mhm. Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. How do I notice that every issue has a theme. Can you talk
Mhm.
about how you decide the theme issues, how you try to get the submissions to fit into the themes or not fit into the themes or speak to the
Right.
themes?
Yeah, so Jason picks the theme. We haven't really talked about how he does it, but I think it's usually just one word.
Mhm.
And then he'll tell us, what the theme is for that story or for that issue. And it's not really a huge deal if a story is really, really good, but it doesn't fit the theme. We're not gonna be like, no, like we'll squeeze it in anyways. The theme is kind of like I think it's just something more fun through my eyes for the magazine. So that it's not just like issue 5, issue 6, like it's like the issue and then something a little bit extra. And then sometimes authors will look at the upcoming theme because Jason, when he posts that we're open for subs, he'll give like the theme of the issue. Some authors will submit like in their email, they'll be like, this is for like issue with the theme this, and then sometimes they'll explain like how they're trying to fit it into the theme, and sometimes they just won't. But yeah, it's really cool if a story fits in with the theme perfectly, and I think that's like a really cool feeling. But we
Mhm.
also don't let the theme stop us from accepting a really great piece.
Oh, interesting. So
Yeah.
you will accept a piece that doesn't exactly fit into the
Hmm.
theme. Okay.
Yeah.
Or you might, sounds like you might ask the author if you can hold it for the next
Yep.
issue.
Hmm.
Okay. So take us through your editorial process. You get a story, and first of all, like how do you respond to a story when you start to like it? Are you is it more of I just had a conversation with another editor, and it was interesting to sort of find out how people approach stories either on an emotional level or an intellectual level. Like what kind of experience are you looking to get from a story? Are you hoping to have something that like really gets under your skin and like you can't
Hmm.
stop thinking about it? Or are you looking for things that are like innovative on a craft level? or both of those things at once. And let's say there is a story. So this is a two-part question. Once you have a story that is doing all the things you like, what happens next?
Yeah, so when I'm starting to look at stories, so Barren has at least for fiction, it's a 50 submission cap so that we have like the bandwidth to be able to read everything, give each a piece the attention it deserves. Um, Sometimes I'm not very good at checking the email and we get like 60 or 70 submissions before I text Jason. I'm like, please close it. I'm panicking. But once we have all of our submissions and they're all entered in the spreadsheet and everything, I kind of get started as soon as I can. I do work a day job. So usually it's like after work or on the weekends or whatever. And I just go straight down the list. So our chart is organized alphabetically. So I'll just go straight down the list because if I jump around, I'll get confused. So I just kind of go from the top to the bottom. And I think for the first read through of each story, it's definitely like I'm looking for something that like grabs my attention, like right from the beginning. Those are stories that I feel like kind of work the best for me. And I feel like stories that grab your attention and then keep your attention throughout are really important. So yeah, the attention grabbing and then like how it makes me feel emotionally is like the two things I look for first. And then usually about halfway through the reading process, I'll set up a meeting with whatever of the editors can make it at whatever time. And I'll have them, be keeping stories in mind they want to talk about. And then we'll kind of like start to narrow it down from what we've read so far, like what we think we might want to accept, which ones we definitely don't. And then once we're getting pretty close to knowing what we're going to accept, I'll go through and read each of the ones that have been like what we call green lighted. I'll read those again and I'll read them a little bit deeper and I'll look for those like the more subtle things, the more like, I don't know, like not necessarily the deeper meaning, but just like how the story fits as a whole. And then I'm also trying to see like how they work together. Like it's really cool when all 3 or 4 stories that we accept, like you see like similar themes in all of them. But it's not a deal breaker if that doesn't happen. But I'll see if any of them fit together. And I'm usually like taking notes as I'm reading too about like what I like, or I'm like going through and like highlighting parts that I knew I liked. And then, yeah, it helps having meetings with my team to like discuss, because we all have like different backgrounds. Like we have people from different parts of the country. We have people from different countries because Barren is all online. It's so easy to have such a wide variety of people working for us, and like different experiences. So it's really, I feel like probably the most important part of the editing process for me is sitting down with my team and like discussing stories. And then, someone brings up, oh, have you looked at it this way? And then some of us are like, oh my gosh, no, I never thought about it that way. And then sometimes it changes minds on stories. So a story that I'm like, oh, well, I didn't think it was that great. Someone might be like, hey, well, have you looked at it this way? And then I'm like, oh my gosh, no way. And then, yeah. So I think the meetings, are the most important part of the editing process for me. And then when we find a story we do want to accept, we have like a color coded system on our Excel sheet, and it's like 4 colors: red, orange, yellow, green. So it's like red for a story we definitely don't want to accept, orange for a story we're maybe leaning to probably not accept, yellow more leaning to accept, and then green is a story we definitely want. And then we get all the stories read. We try to have 3 sets of eyes on each story, but sometimes it doesn't happen, but we always have at least 2. And then we kind of discuss all together, okay, like which ones are we for sure accepting? And then I'll let Jason know which ones those are, and then then we'll send out acceptances and rejections. Because we don't want to get ahead of ourselves and like send out acceptances as we're all like, oh yeah, this story is great, because then what if we find another one that's really great, but we've already sent out all 3 of our acceptances. So we wait until everything has been read, and then we'll send out acceptances. And in the acceptances, I try really hard to like, I go through the comments that my editors have left on the spreadsheet, and I'll take pieces of like comments that they made of things they really liked, and I'll put those in the email, like just some feedback from the editors and like the things that they said. And then I usually ask, like, I make sure the piece is still available, because sometimes pieces get snatched up and authors just don't have the bandwidth to like message every magazine they submitted to. So I'll message them and make sure it's still available. tell them we'd really love to have it. And
Mhm.
then once they let me know that yes, it is still available, I'll tell them, okay, great. And then I'll ask, we have them send us a photo and a bio when they submit, but I'll make sure and ask them if there's anything they want to change with the photo and the bio. And then once they get those to me finished, I'll get those over to Jason. And then Jason kind of puts everything together all pretty.
Mhm. That's great. And are there certain submissions that you tend to see a lot of, or certain themes or topics that you see covered a lot? Does it go in phases? Like you see a lot of, like right now, you're seeing a lot of, I don't know, pandemic stories or wildfire stories, or and how would you sort of advise writers to work around that?
I think it definitely does come in waves. I know our first issue that we opened for, once the pandemic started, it was like, I feel like every other story was a pandemic story. And I was
Mm,
just like, guys, I can't do this right now. Like, I'm living this in my life every day. I don't want to be reading about it every day too. Um, but I understood that like people were living it, so they were writing about it.
mhm,
But that was kind of rough, like reading a pandemic story. Every like every story I felt like at that time.
mhm.
I don't think we've had many wildfire stories, even like when the fires were happening in Australia and everything. I don't recall reading any. I think it's mostly like really big things like the pandemic and some things with like that were happening with Ukraine. I mean, it's still happening, but like when it was like more frontline in the media, the things happening in Ukraine, and we got a few stories about that. And then I think we do get a pretty wide range of stories. We get a lot of like slice of life stories, and we get a lot of like murder stories. There was a story I really loved. I think it was a couple issues ago, and I was the only one who loved it, and it was like a revenge story, and it was so great, but no one else liked it, so we didn't get to publish it, which is a bummer. But um, we get a lot of like sexual abuse survivor stories, a lot of domestic abuse survivor stories, um, a lot of like addict stories, things like that. So yeah, I think we get a pretty big range.
Okay. And how important is it to you who the writer is sort of off the page? Because I noticed this was a discussion thread that we opened up on the newsletter, and I noticed that Barren has a statement on their site about like misconduct of writers.
Mhm.
So is that something like, are you following your writers to sort of like see how they behave out in the real world? And how do you sort of balance like loving a writer's work and then also maybe not always loving who the writer is, or
Mhm.
how do you deal with situations like that?
Right. So personally, so in our spreadsheet, so like the contributing editors don't see author names or bios or photos or anything like that. I do through the email. I see the name and the bio and the photo and everything like that. I I wouldn't say that we necessarily, I don't like screen authors. So I don't like see a submission, find their name. I don't look them up on Facebook. I don't Google them. I don't look them up on Twitter. Like I like people, everyone has done things in the past. Like I get it. Like we were all like terrible high schoolers. Like I get it. Like I'm never gonna like be like, oh well, you made this really crappy tweet in like 2012, so I don't think we can accept your story anymore. Um, but I do look at like, so when they've put in their bio what other places they've been published. If it's a magazine I'm not familiar with, I'll look at that magazine, I'll find that story, and I won't read the story all the way through. Sometimes I do run across a story that I have read, and I'm like, oh, okay, and then I feel more familiar. But I'll like scan through a story and see, oh, sorry, and see like what else they've written. But yeah, I wouldn't say we don't like, I don't go and Google an author
Mm,
based on like what they send me for a submission. I can't remember if we've pulled stories from the website in the past from authors. Um, I don't think we have, but I'm sure that if something did come up, and it was brought to Jason's attention, he might, like have a conversation with the author and tell them like we're
mm.
pulling the story, here's why, stuff like that. But I can't recall something like that happening, at least while I've been there.
Sure. So it sounds like it's more like a preemptive statement than
Mhm.
it is something that is actively happening.
Yeah.
So when you look at the author's other stories, is it just to like see what else they're about, what else they're
Yep.
working on? Yeah.
Yeah, I like to see like if they have like if they're writing not to judge them based off of, but just like out of my own curiosity, like what else they write, where they've been published. Because it's just kind of cool. I don't know. This might be kind of weird, but it's kind of cool to see like I really like OK Donkey, so it's cool when someone has like submitted to or have like been accepted to OK Donkey. I'm like, oh my gosh, no way! I probably read that story, things like that. So it's just kind of like it makes me feel more familiar with them as a person instead of just like this like random page, like 6 pages or
Right.
whatever that I'm just reading.
But it's not like a situation where you're like, oh my God, I love this story. I'm just about to accept it. And then you go see that they wrote this other story 3 years ago and there was like a bad.
Yeah, no.
You're like,
Yeah.
actually, I don't want to work with this person.
Right. Yeah, no.
Okay. Yeah, that's good to know. So how can people get more involved in the magazine? Are you looking for readers? Are you looking for contributing editors? Is there a way to get more involved?
Yeah, so I know for fiction right now, once the new we just finished issue 22. It's 21 and I think it's 22. Um but once the next issue opens up, we're definitely going to be needing some contributing editors for fiction. I didn't have any experience when I first started, so I don't think experience is really an issue. It's pretty easy to pick up on. I feel like if you know how to read, like whatever, that's pretty much the only like prerequisite that we have. I don't know. I think poetry might also be looking for contributing editors. Last time I talked with Jason, but I'm not positive about any others. I know, like, if you're following our Twitter, Jason is really good about like when the issue is getting ready to open. He's really good about like putting out that we will need contributing editors for X, Y, and Z sections, and then I think he links the website, and I don't know if there's an application. I didn't fill out an application. I just emailed Megan and told her about like my college project. But I think there might be an application. But yeah, Jason's really good about like linking all that stuff. He's a pretty great EIC.
That's interesting. So are there different contributing editors for each issue? Is this like a
Yep.
rotating system?
Well, it kind of depends. So when a new issue is getting ready to start, at least like I personally will message. We have a Slack that we go through Slack for our group chats. And I will kind of like put out in the Slack like, hey, we're opening for submissions this day. Like, please like let me know who has the bandwidth to be able to work on this issue. And if you don't know, worries. We don't kick people from the Slack. We don't like tell people they can't read for us anymore if they haven't been reading recently. It's kind of like come and go as you can, as you need to, as you have the time to. But so I know for the last issue, we only had 5 of us, including myself and then my co-editor. And that was a little bit rough getting through everything. Because I think before when I first started, there were like 8 or 10 of us. But yeah, so Jason always posts on the Twitter what we need. And if you only have the time for one issue, that's fine. Like we all communicate very well together. So I feel like, and no one's ever really mad if someone's like, hey, I can't keep reading this issue, like maybe next issue. We're all like, okay, cool, like whatever. Like we all have our own lives. Like we don't get paid for this. Like it's all like volunteer. It's all something we enjoy. So nobody like really gets mad when we're like, yeah, I have to like put my day job and my children first. No one's like, oh, okay.
Right. Well, that's actually a question that I ask. It's a good segue to a question that I ask all the editors, because it sounds like you work full time at a day job.
Yes.
And then you have other, life things going on. How do you sustain the energy for this work? If you're volunteer, you're not getting paid for it. What keeps you doing it?
So I have my degree in English language and literature, my bachelor's, and then a year and a half ago, my fiance and I moved from Washington to Wyoming. So I kind of like, as we moved here, and I graduated in the height of the pandemic. I graduated in 2020. So there was no way I was going to like get a job with my degree. So I've been a barista since I was just before I turned 17. So I was like, well, I can get a job doing that again. So I went back to that. And then we moved. And then I was just kind of like, as we were getting ready to move, I was just looking for whatever job I could do. And then I got another job as a barista over here. And now I'm managing the cafe, and like I've moved up way faster than I ever thought I would. So, and this is a job that like I love making coffee. I love doing this. Like I would never give it up. And I'm off between 2 and 3:30 every day. So my cafe is only open until 3. So it's easy to like get off work, come home, have a snack, and then sit down and edit. And if I don't give myself a schedule, I won't do something. So
Right.
I have like a little calendar, and I'm like, when we have an issue open, I'm like, okay, I'm editing this day and this day from this time to this time. And then, yeah, working the hours that I work makes it very easy to do something else outside of work.
Right.
For that, I'm super grateful. I know like some of my other editors who have like a 9 to 5 job, some of them are teachers, stuff like that. They'll do like a bunch of work all at once on the weekends.
Mm.
But yeah, so with my job, it's pretty easy for me to balance only working until 2 or 3:30 every day.
Sounds easy for you because you're very dedicated, clearly. Also,
Yeah.
I think for a lot of people, it would be like the last thing they'd want to come home and do.
Yeah,
It's really impressive.
yeah, I kind of see it as a way, like even though I'm not getting paid for it, like I'm still using my degree and it's something I
Mm.
still enjoy.
Mhm.
And like I think I got really lucky working for Barren because Jason is an amazing EIC, and like all of the other admin team, they're all really great people. And everyone's really easygoing. Like
Mhm.
it's very easy to talk to everybody. There's really no like drama or animosity between, like it's not very cliquey. Like it's not like, oh, the fiction girl, like the fiction people don't like the nonfiction people, and like we all work very well together.
That's great.
Um, and it's a fun job to have.
Yeah, sure. So just to cover the basics, tell us, you have contests. When are those running, and are you open for submissions now?
So contests, I think they're mostly just for poetry, I want to say. So I don't know too much about that. But like I said, if you're following the Twitter, they always post everything on the Twitter. Jason is really, really good about running the Twitter, and the other admin team. And I think they try and post with like plenty of time, and then they'll post reminders when a contest is happening, things like that. I do not believe we have one going on right now for poetry, and we just finished up our issue that's gonna get published soon. So this is September. I want to say our next one might be December, but I'm not positive. But yeah, so we're not open for submissions yet, but Jason always posts like what time and what day we're gonna open.
Oh, wow.
And then he posts like, hey, we have 10 more fiction slots left. We have, like he's good about updating, and then he'll let everybody know when the submissions have closed. And then he always updates our automatic reply emails if we're not open. So if you submit while we're open, you'll get an email that's like, hey, we're not open for submissions now, but like keep an eye on the Twitter and we'll let you know when we are open.
Sure. And can you give us a sneak peek about the upcoming theme? Do you know what that's going to be?
For the one that is about to be?
For the one, or yeah, you can tell us the one that's coming out, and then also if you have a sense of for the one that's going to be open for submissions.
Yeah, I have it here somewhere. Sorry, I did not come prepared.
You can also send me a message after, and I'll just.
Okay, yeah, I'll message you after, because I have it in the email somewhere, but I don't know where I put my email out.
So people can find, actually, related to this, how will people find the updates when you say Jason will post it? Is it he'll post it on Twitter, Facebook?
Yep.
So how can people stay in touch with the magazine, find out about these updates?
Yeah, so definitely Twitter is the place that gets like updated the most with submissions and stuff like that. And I think it's just Barren Magazine is the @ and we have an Instagram, but I don't know if Instagram gets kept up with very well, but definitely the Twitter for sure.
Okay, so people can find you on Twitter, on the site, barren.com, barrenmagazine.com.
Barrenmagazine.com.
So everybody should check it out. Go read the work. There's some really strong, intense work, very, very, indeed, very gritty stuff there. And submit and find your own gritty work and send it along ASAP. And thanks so much for taking the time, Emily.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Sure.
Thanks.